Today we're going to be exploring exposure modes on the Canon 70D. But first, what is an exposure mode? When you take a photo, your camera needs to make three key decisions. How much light to let in through the lens, that's your aperture. How long the sensor is exposed to that light, that's your shutter speed. And how sensitive the sensor is to light, that's your ISO or ISO. Together, these three settings control your exposure, whether your photo looks too bright, too dark, or just right. An exposure mode determines who makes those decisions. Is it you, the camera, or a combination of both? On the Canon 70D, the exposure modes live on this dial on top of the camera. The exposure modes can be grouped into four. You have your basic modes, you have your scene modes, you have your creative modes, and then finally you have a custom mode where you can save custom settings. So let's look at the basic zone first. In the basic zone, leave your fully automatic modes. So let's look at them one by one. The first one is the one with the green A with a plus, and that's your scene intelligent auto mode. In this mode, the camera controls everything. You just point and shoot, and it's ideal for complete beginners or situations where you just want or just need a quick shot without really thinking about it. The next mode on the Canon 70D is the flash off mode, the one with the crossed out flash icon. And this is identical to Scene Intelligent Auto, the first one, but forces the flash to stay off regardless of lighting condition. And this is useful in locations where flash is prohibited. Next up is your Creative Auto or CA. This is a stepping stone between full auto and manual. And what this does is the camera still handles the technical settings, but gives you a simple slider based control system for things like background blur, for brightness, and drive mode, amongst other things. And so it doesn't require you to have any knowledge of things like aperture or shutter speed. Next up are our scene modes. And these are specialty automatic modes. So we're still in auto modes, but these are specialty ones. In that grouping, you get portrait with the face icon, and this optimizes settings for people. The camera selects a wide aperture to blur the background and renders skin tones warmly. The next one is your landscape option, and this is the one with the mountain icon. And this one optimizes for wide scenes. The camera selects a narrow aperture so that everything is in focus for maximum depth of field. So in this case, everything from the foreground to the background is sharp, and it also boosts the greens and blues for vivid outdoor color. Next up, you have close-up with the flower icon, and this is also called the macro mode. And this optimizes settings for shooting small subjects up close, and the camera tries to maximize sharpness on the subject while softening the background. Next up is your sport, and it's got that running figure icon. This one optimizes for fast moving subjects. The camera selects a fast shutter speed to freeze motion and uses AI servo continuous autofocus to track the moving subject throughout the frame. Next grouping is our creative zone, and this is probably where you're going to live the most, and this is where you need to practice your photography. And these are your semi-manual or semi-automatic and manual modes. First up in this group is our program AE or P. In this mode, the camera automatically selects both aperture and shutter speed for a correct exposure. But you still have control over ISO, you still have control over white balance, exposure compensation, and other settings. And one thing you can also do in this mode is if the camera has decided on a certain aperture and shutter speed combination, You can actually shift your aperture and shutter so that you have more creative control. So maybe you want your background a bit blurry, you choose a wide aperture and the camera then adjusts your shutter speed to match. Next up is shutter priority, and this is labeled TV. You set the shutter speed and the camera automatically chooses the aperture to achieve correct exposure. Now, TV stands for time value. You want to use a fast shutter speed like 1 over 1000 to freeze motion or action. Inversely, use a slow one like a quarter to create a motion blur. So maybe water or light trails. This is your go-to mode anytime controlling motion is the priority. Next up is your aperture priority, AE or AV. You set the aperture and the camera automatically chooses the shutter speed. AV stands for aperture value. A wide aperture like f1.8 blurs the background for portraits. A narrow aperture like f11 on the other hand keeps everything sharp, and you use this for things like landscapes. This is the most widely used creative mode amongst photographers because depth of field is so fundamental to composition. Next up is your manual mode, and in this one you set both aperture and shutter speed yourself. ISO can be set to manual or left on auto if you want. And the camera's meter shows you whether your setting will over or underexpose, but it won't override your choice. So full creative control, and it's essential for studio work, it's essential for video, it's essential in tricky lighting situations, and anytime you need consistent exposure across multiple shots. Next up is your bulb mode, and this is a specialized manual mode for extremely long exposures. The shutter stays open for as long as you hold down the shutter, or for as long as a remote release holds it open. Usually when you're doing long exposures, it's recommended that you buy a remote that you can use to operate the camera and keep those exposures going. This one is used for night sky photography, for star trails, for lightning. You can use it for fireworks and also for light painting. A remote shutter release is strongly recommended, like I said, to avoid camera shake during those long exposures. And then finally, you have your custom mode. Now, this is not really an exposure mode as such, but the custom shooting mode is a saved preset position. So you configure your camera exactly how you want it. Exposure mode, autofocus settings, drive mode, picture style, everything, and save it all to the C position via the custom shooting mode option. And I will do a separate video on how exactly you do that. Once you have all that saved, it means just one turn of the dial and your entire setup is instantly recalled for use. This is ideal for photographers who switch frequently between two very different shooting scenarios, like events and studio work. So you might have your custom position for studio, and then you go out and you shoot an event, you change all the settings, and then when you come back to the studio, all you need to do is go to your custom mode and your camera is back to your studio settings. So those are 16 mode dial positions in total. That's it for today. We will cover each of those modes in more detail in subsequent videos. See you on the next one.